The first time I saw Julian, he was a silhouette against the neon glow of a San Diego dive bar, laughing too loud, his voice cutting through the smoky haze like a blade. I was 24, nursing a cheap beer, trying to blend into the shadows of a life I didn't quite understand. By the third time he asked, "Do you like him?" About some guy I barely noticed, I realized Julian wasn't just curious. He was searching for something in me, something I wasn't ready to name. My name is Marcus, and I grew up in a small town in Georgia where questions about love were answered with church hymns and warnings about sin. I moved to California to escape the weight of those expectations, landing a job as a barista in a bustling coastal city. San Diego was alive, vibrant, chaotic, and unapologetic. It was the kind of place where you could be anyone, but I still felt like nobody. I rented a cramped apartment with peeling paint, spent my nights scrolling through dating apps, and wondered if I'd ever feel at home in my own skin. Julian was different. He was 25, a graphic designer with a spark in his dark eyes and a laugh that made strangers turn. Born in Tijuana, raised in Chula Vista, he carried a warmth that felt like summer even in December. We met at a bar called the Rusty Anchor, a place where locals and drifters collided. I was there to meet a friend who never showed. Julian was there celebrating a freelance gig. He slid into the stool next to me, ordered a tequila sunrise, and started talking like we'd known each other for years. "You come here often, Marcus?" he asked, his accent a soft melody of confidence and charm. I shook my head, muttering something about it being a one-off. He grinned, leaning closer. "Good. This place needs more guys like you to class it up." I laughed, caught off guard. Julian had a way of disarming you, making you feel seen without trying too hard. That night, we talked about everything: music, movies, the way the ocean smelled at dusk. He asked about my life in Georgia, and I dodged the heavy parts, but his eyes held a knowing look, like he saw the cracks I tried to hide. When he asked, "Do you like him?" pointing to some guy dancing nearby, I brushed it off, saying I wasn't looking. But Julian's question lingered, a seed planted in soil I didn't know was fertile. Over the next few weeks, Julian became a constant. He'd show up at the coffee shop where I worked, ordering a latte with an extra shot and teasing me about my apron. "You make that thing look good, Marcus," he'd say, and I'd roll my eyes, ignoring the heat creeping up my neck. We'd hang out after my shifts, walking the boardwalk, sharing fries at a food truck, or sitting on the beach, watching waves crash under a starlit sky. He'd ask about guys we passed. "Do you like him?" And I'd laugh, deflect, or change the subject. I didn't know why it bothered me, but it did. Maybe because I was starting to wonder what he meant by it. Maybe because I was starting to notice the way his smile made my chest tighten. One night, we ended up at a pier, the air thick with salt and the distant hum of a street performer's guitar. Julian leaned against the railing, his silhouette sharp against the moonlit water. "You ever think about what you're running from, Marcus?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. I froze. "What makes you think I'm running?" He turned, his eyes locking onto mine. "Because you're here in a city that's all about freedom, but you still look like you're carrying a cage." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the truth stung. I'd left Georgia to escape the judgment, the whispers, the feeling that who I was would never be enough. But the fear followed me, a shadow I couldn't outrun. Julian didn't push, just stood there, his presence steady, like he was waiting for me to catch up to myself. That was the night I realized I didn't just like Julian. I was falling for him, and it terrified me. I'd never said the word gay out loud, not even to myself. In Georgia, it was a word that came with consequences, sermons, sidelong glances, or worse. Here, in San Diego, it was just another truth, but I wasn't ready to claim it. Not yet. The next time we met, Julian invited me to a local art show, one of his designs on display. The gallery was crowded, filled with people sipping wine and murmuring about creativity. Julian's piece, a vibrant mural of intersecting colors, bold and unapologetic, stood out like a shout in a quiet room. I watched him talk to strangers, his hands animated, his laughter infectious. I felt proud, but also something deeper, something I couldn't name. After the show, we walked to a nearby park, the city lights twinkling like stars trapped in glass. He was quieter than usual, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "You didn't answer my question the other night," he said, stopping under a street lamp. "What question?" I asked, though I knew. "What you're running from." He stepped closer, his breath visible in the cool night air. "Or maybe who you're running toward." My heart pounded. I wanted to tell him everything, about the fear, the shame, the way his presence made me feel alive in a way I'd never known. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I said, "I'm just trying to figure it out, Julian." He nodded, his eyes soft but searching. "When you do, I'll be here." That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized Julian wasn't just asking about other guys. He was asking about me, about us, and for the first time I let myself imagine what it would be like to say yes. Months passed, and Julian became the rhythm of my days. We'd meet at the coffee shop, share late-night tacos at a food truck, or drive up the coast to watch the sunrise. Each moment with him felt like a brushstroke on a canvas I hadn't known was blank. But the question, "Do you like him?" still hung between us, unspoken now, but heavy. I knew what he was really asking, and I knew I wasn't ready to answer. San Diego was a city of contrasts. Sun-soaked beaches and stormy nights, open hearts and hidden scars. I was learning to navigate it, but Julian was my compass. He'd grown up straddling borders, his family moving between Mexico and the US, and he carried that duality with ease. He was proud, unapologetic, and fiercely kind. I envied that. I was still wrestling with the boy from Georgia who'd been taught to hide. One evening, Julian took me to a queer community event in Hillcrest, the heart of San Diego's vibrant LGBT scene. The streets were alive with color. Rainbow flags, music, people dancing without fear. I felt out of place, my hands shoved deep in my pockets, my eyes darting like I was waiting for judgment. Julian noticed. He always did. "You okay, Marcus?" he asked, nudging my shoulder as we walked through the crowd. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a lot." He didn't push, but he stayed close, his presence a quiet anchor. We stopped at a booth selling handmade bracelets, and he bought one for me. A simple leather band with a small silver charm. "For courage," he said, slipping it onto my wrist. His fingers lingered, warm against my skin, and I felt my pulse quicken. That night, we ended up at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. The air was crisp, the skyline a mosaic of light and shadow. Julian leaned back, sipping a drink, his eyes reflecting the glow of the city. "You ever think about what it means to be free?" he asked. I shrugged, unsure how to answer. "I guess being able to be yourself no matter what." He nodded, his gaze steady. "Exactly. But it's not just about being out. It's about being honest. With yourself. With the people who matter." His words hit hard. I wanted to tell him I was trying, that I was scared, that I didn't know how to be the person he saw in me. Instead, I said, "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But it's worth it." The tension between us grew, a current I couldn't ignore. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance, but fear held me back. Not fear of him, but of what it would mean to admit I wanted him, to admit I might love him. The next week, everything changed. I got a call from my sister, Lena, back in Georgia. Our dad was sick, heart trouble, the kind that didn't wait. She needed me home. I hadn't been back in years, not since I left under the weight of unspoken truths. The thought of returning made my stomach twist, but I booked a flight. Julian drove me to the airport. The ride was quiet, the radio filling the gaps. As we pulled up to the terminal, he turned to me, his eyes searching. "You'll be okay, Marcus. Whatever happens, you're stronger than you think." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to tell him how much he meant to me, how he'd become the one thing I didn't want to leave behind. But all I managed was, "Thanks, Julian, for everything." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Call me when you get there." Georgia was exactly as I remembered. Humid, heavy, and full of ghosts. My dad was in the hospital, his face gaunt, his voice weak. Lena was there, holding his hand, her eyes red from crying. Seeing them brought back every memory I tried to bury. The sermons about sin, the arguments about who I should be, the silence when I left. Dad didn't ask why I'd stayed away so long, and I didn't offer answers. But being home forced me to confront the truth. I wasn't just Marcus, the barista in San Diego. I was Marcus, the gay black man who'd spent years running from himself. And I was Marcus, who was falling in love with Julian, whether I was ready to admit it or not. I called Julian every night, his voice a lifeline across the miles. He'd tell me about his latest design project or a funny story from the coffee shop, and I'd tell him about the hospital, the weight of my dad's silence, the way Georgia felt like a trap. One night, he asked, "You coming back soon, Marcus?" "Yeah," I said, my voice cracking. "I miss you." There was a pause, then his voice soft and steady. "I miss you too." When I hung up, I realized I'd said it without thinking. "I miss you." 3 words that felt like a confession. I didn't know if I was ready to say more, but I knew I couldn't keep running. Back in San Diego, the air felt lighter, but I was heavier. Georgia had stirred up old wounds, and my dad's frail form lingered in my mind. He hadn't said much before I left, just a quiet, "Take care, son." It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't condemnation either. I clung to that as I stepped off the plane, searching the crowd for Julian. He was there, leaning against a pillar, his smile brighter than the California sun. I dropped my bag and hugged him, longer than I meant to, his warmth seeping into me like a promise. "Welcome back, Marcus," he whispered, and I felt something shift, a wall crumbling, a truth rising. We didn't talk about it right away. Instead, we fell back into our rhythm, coffee runs, beach walks, late-night talks. But something was different. His questions about other guys stopped, replaced by a quiet intensity in the way he looked at me. I felt it too, the pull between us, like gravity I couldn't fight. One night, we drove to a cliff overlooking the Pacific. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Julian parked his beat-up Honda, and we sat on the hood, the ocean stretching out before us. He was quiet, his hands fidgeting with the bracelet he'd given me. "Marcus," he said finally, his voice low, "I need to ask you something." My heart raced. I knew what was coming, but I wasn't ready. "What?" He turned to me, his eyes locking onto mine. "Do you love me?" The world stopped. The waves, the wind, the heartbeat of the city. All of it faded. There was just Julian, his gaze steady, his vulnerability raw. I wanted to run, to hide, to say I wasn't sure. But I was tired of running, tired of hiding. "I think I do," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared, Julian. I don't know how to do this." He reached for my hand, his fingers warm and sure. "You don't have to know. You just have to try." That was the moment I kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't perfect, just desperate and real, like a breath I'd been holding for years. His lips were soft, his hands steady on my face, and for the first time, I felt free. Not free from fear, but free to face it. After that, everything changed. We were no longer just friends, no longer dancing around the truth. Julian was my boyfriend, and saying it out loud felt like claiming a piece of myself I'd locked away. But love, I learned, wasn't just sunsets and kisses. It was messy, complicated, and sometimes painful. A few weeks later, I got another call from Lena. Dad's condition had worsened. She didn't ask me to come back, but I heard it in her voice. Julian sat with me as I booked the flight, his hand on my knee, his presence a quiet strength. "You don't have to go alone," he said. "I'll come with you." I shook my head. "This is something I need to do myself." He nodded, but his eyes were worried. "Just come back to me, okay?" "I will," I promised, and I meant it. Georgia was harder the second time. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and regret, and Dad looked smaller, his breathing uneven. Lena and I took turns sitting by his bed, but the silence between us was heavy. One night, he woke up, his eyes clearer than they'd been in days. "Marcus," he said, his voice weak, "you happy out there?" I thought of Julian, of the cliff, of the kiss that changed everything. "Yeah, Dad, I am." He nodded, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "Good." He didn't say more, and I didn't ask. But that moment felt like a bridge, fragile but real, between the man I was and the man I was becoming. When I got back to San Diego, Julian was waiting at the airport again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I pulled him into my arms, kissed him in front of the crowd, and whispered, "I love you." He smiled, his eyes shining. "Took you long enough." Loving Julian was like learning a new language. Beautiful, challenging, and full of surprises. We moved in together, a small apartment near the beach, our lives tangled in the best way. Mornings were coffee and stolen kisses. Nights were debates over takeout and falling asleep to the hum of the city. But love didn't erase the world's edges. It sharpened them. San Diego was progressive but not perfect. We got stares sometimes. Two men holding hands, one black, one Latino, our love a quiet rebellion. Most days we ignored it, but some days it stung. I was still learning to carry my truth proudly, and Julian was my guide, his confidence a light I followed. One evening we went to a friend's party in North Park. The house was packed, music pulsing, laughter spilling into the night. Julian was in his element, charming everyone, his hand resting easily on my back. I was quieter, still adjusting to being us in public. Then I overheard it, a muttered comment from a guy in the corner, something about people like them not belonging. I froze, the old fear creeping in. Julian heard it too. He didn't flinch, just squeezed my hand and said, "Let's dance." He pulled me to the center of the room, his arms around me, and we swayed to a song I didn't know. The world melted away, and it was just us, moving together, unafraid. Later, as we walked home, I asked, "How do you do it? How do you just not care?" He stopped, his eyes serious. "I care, Marcus. I just don't let it own me. We're here, we're real, and no one gets to take that away." His words stayed with me, a reminder that love was a choice. Not just to feel, but to fight for. And I was learning to fight. But the biggest test came months later. I got a job offer, a good one, managing a new coffee shop chain in Seattle. It was a chance to grow, to build something of my own. But it meant leaving San Diego, leaving Julian unless he came with me. I told him over dinner, my hands shaking as I laid out the details. He listened, his face unreadable. "What do you want, Marcus?" he asked finally. "I want the job," I said. "But I want you more." He smiled, but it was tight. "I can't just leave. My work, my family. It's all here." The air grew heavy, the distance between us more than the table. We didn't fight, but we didn't resolve it either. For the first time, I saw doubt in Julian's eyes, and it scared me more than anything. The next few weeks were tense. We still loved each other, still laughed and kissed and held on tight, but the question of Seattle loomed. I didn't want to lose him, but I didn't want to hold him back. He was the same, torn between his roots and the life we'd built. One night, I found him sketching on our balcony, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. "What's that?" I asked, nodding at his sketchpad. He showed me a drawing of us, standing on that cliff, hands intertwined, the ocean endless before us. "This is what matters," he said. "You and me, wherever we are." I took his hand, my voice steady. "Come with me to Seattle. We'll figure it out together." He looked at me, his eyes searching, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it." Seattle was a new world. Rainy, green, and quieter than San Diego's sun-soaked chaos. We found a small apartment in Capitol Hill, the heart of the city's queer community, and made it ours. Julian got a job at a local design studio, and I threw myself into the coffee shop, building something I was proud of. But the move wasn't easy. Uprooting our lives tested us in ways I hadn't expected. Julian missed his family, his culture, the warmth of California. I missed the ocean, the ease of our old life. There were nights we argued, small things like dishes or schedules, masking bigger fears. Were we enough for each other? Could love carry us through? One evening, after a long day, we walked to a nearby park. The air was cool, the trees dripping with rain. Julian was quiet, his hands in his pockets, his sketchpad tucked under his arm. I felt the distance growing, and it terrified me. "Julian," I said, stopping under a canopy of trees. "Are we okay?" He turned, his eyes soft but tired. "I don't know, Marcus. I love you, but this is hard." My heart sank. I thought of all the moments that brought us here, the cliff, the kiss, the promise to try. I took his hand, pulling him close. "I don't want to lose you. Tell me how to fix this." He looked at me, his face raw with emotion. "Just keep showing up. That's all I need." So we did. We showed up, for each other, for the life we were building. We found new routines. Sunday brunches at a local diner, sketching sessions in coffee shops, quiet nights watching the rain. Slowly, Seattle became home, not because of the city, but because of us. 1 year later, we stood on a rooftop overlooking Puget Sound, the city lights twinkling below. It was our anniversary, and Julian had planned a surprise. A picnic, complete with my favorite coffee and his favorite tacos. We laughed, reminisced, and danced to music only we could hear. As the night deepened, Julian took my hand, his eyes steady. "Do you love me?" he asked, his voice echoing the question that changed everything. I smiled, no hesitation. "More than anything." He kissed me, slow and sure, and I felt it. The weight of every fear, every doubt, falling away. We weren't perfect, but we were real, and that was enough. Our story wasn't just about love. It was about courage, about choosing each other in a world that didn't always choose us back. It was about the boy from Georgia who learned to say, "I love you," and the boy from Chula Vista who showed him how. And as we stood there, the city alive around us, I knew we'd keep choosing each other, no matter what came next.